Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week we are exploring the concept of non-attachment. You'll discover what non-attachment is, how to practice it, and the many benefits of non-attachment in your daily life. Okay, David, so what is non-attachment?
It's a great subject, and it's a real Taoist subject. So the top line answer is clear the clutter. If you're attached to clutter, either physical clutter in your house, and we'll talk about that, and this is feng shui, clear the clutter. But I want to concentrate more about the clutter in your mind and how it blocks up your thinking, the flow of qi energy. And coming from a Taoist perspective, that's what we're talking about. Are we allowing the life force of qi energy to flow through our lives and through ourselves without clutter?
And David, and I guess because most of our teachings are about what goes on in our mind and how it affects our flow.
That's right.
So this mental clutter, is it clutter to do with how we think about the past? So rumination, what we're kind of concerned about in the here and now, and kind of worries or fears or expectations for the future. So past, present, and future clutter.
All of the above.
Okay.
All of the above. I would categorize it in our model as the inner child. The inner child really gets over busy, overthinking. A lot of my clients say, oh my goodness, I overthink. This is the clutter. We're filling up our mind, exactly what you said. What should have happened in the past, what's happening now you're not happy with, and then fearful of the future. All the stuff we talk about, CCJ, criticizing, comparing, being judgmental, clutter. You're cluttering up your mind. And what you're doing is you're not allowing that natural flow, that energy that you've got to flow in harmony and to be authentic. So if you think about it in the way of a house, I've seen those programs on television where people, I think they call them hoarders, and they hoard and they clutter and they accumulate and they're attached and they can't let go of things until in the end they can't even get in their own house, or they're just living on they've got this big house and they're just living in one part or one chair or one bed. And that happens in our minds, Alex. If we fill our minds of all this stuff, it's like we're hoarding, and we don't want to let go of it. And this is why it's so important, because like when you see those TV programs and somebody comes in to help them clear it, they hang on to it. They say, oh yes, but that newspaper goes back to the 1940s. I may want to read that again. I may want to look at that again. And that's exactly what we do with our mind. We hold on to this hoarding and this clutter, and we fill our minds, and until we can't live in our own minds. We're so constricted in our thinking. All the things we talk about, it's like we're seeing life through a very narrow lens.
I think, David, though, a lot of people would say, okay, so well, what are you suggesting, that we don't have any desires to hold on to memories of the past, or that we shouldn't have any expectations of future outcomes, or expectations of a relationship, or expectations if I work hard, I may achieve this. It's hard to kind of almost wipe the slate clean. I mean, is that what you're saying, that we need to wipe the slate clean in terms of our mental expectations or desires or needs?
No, I'm not saying that, Alex. And on the emotional pendulum, what happens is you go to the extreme and you say, are you saying I should forget everything? Well, of course, I'm not saying that. I mean, we as human beings, we have to use the house analogy, and we have to have furniture, and we have to have these type of things, a bed to sleep in, a seat to sit on, a table to eat our food on. But what do you need? And this is the real question. Because the inner child part of the subconscious mind will always need more, want to accumulate, want to stack up, put it away for a rainy day, until you can't live is in your own mind, because it's even if it began to rain, you couldn't find the umbrella because it's stuck at the back of the cupboard. No, what I'm saying is something very different. I'm saying to let go of the things that you don't need. Remember I use that analogy of the hoarder, and when somebody goes to help them and they want to take away and go, oh no, I need that. They're not being truthful. See, and so we come back onto the principles of Wu Wei Wisdom: truth, honesty, and integrity. Are you going to use it? Are those memories that you're talking about, are they relevant? Can you file them away? Can you put them into a cupboard, not keep them active in your mind?
I think it's very difficult for people to distinguish, though, David, what is something is needed or is practically useful in terms of a memory or a life experience, and then to take the essence of that and then to file the rest away, because we don't want to forget about kind of challenges or things we've learned in the past, or, if someone wronged us, we learned a lesson from that. We don't want to forget everything. And nor should we have no, I guess, expectations or no desires for the future. I think it would be difficult to just have a zero plan for the future. So I'm just finding it difficult to work out how we practically get to a point of healthy non-attachment.
Okay, so let's use the example that you use. Somebody's wronged you in the past, and then you said you've learned the lesson.
Yeah.
So now why do you want to carry around all that experience of how they hurt you, what they did, what they should have done, what they could have done, what you did, what went wrong, and you build up this story like an anchor instead of learning the lesson and let it go. Let it go and let it be. It's a wonderful translation of a Taoist saying. Let it go. Just let it go. Why do you need it? So you have to be absolutely authentic and truthful with yourself. Why do you need to hold on to that whole story? You see, again, we're talking about the inner child. The inner child loved this story about how things are against them, how they're a victim, how it should have been, how it could have been. A lot of my clients, for instance, will tell me terrible stories about their childhood. Awful. The way that they were abandoned, not loved, the way that they were physically abused or sexually abused. Terrible, terrible, terrible stories. And they say, this has ruined my life. But it hasn't, Alex, unless you're carrying that memory along with you, like an anchor pulling you along. Because we don't know, or they'll say things like, this is another good example. They'll say things like, if my dad would have done that, things would have been better. And they build up this big story about how things would be better. But we don't know things would have been better. They could have been worse. So why can't we just let it go? Take a breath. Things are the way they were. The future will be, I want to talk about the future as in a second, but the past, we can't change the past. We haven't got a time machine. Why don't you just accept? Here's the Taoist teaching. This is the life lesson. Accept. Accept what happened. It happened. Accept it. Now build off that. Now let go of that.
And so I was going to say, I'm strongly getting this sense of acceptance being very, very important in the practice of non-attachment. And when you say acceptance, that doesn't mean to think in your mind, well, what happened was okay, it was acceptable, it was right. But just acceptance that it happened, whatever happened in the past, it was part of your life journey. And the best you can do is take the lesson, but not create the elaborate story, because then we become very attached to the elaborate story, which is something that will block us, that will hold us back, which will stop our flow, block our energy.
You're right, Alex, and it's really important that you've highlighted, and we've done many teachings on acceptance, and you're absolutely right. Acceptance doesn't mean it's okay. Acceptance does not mean it was okay. Acceptance is totally different. Acceptance is it happened. You are victorious. You are amazing. You got through it. I don't know how you got through it, but you did. Now leave it where it belongs. It's in the rear view mirror. Don't keep dragging it along and cluttering up your life. And this is the clutter I'm talking about. It's like, well, it happened to me 20 years ago. It was unfair. It was unjust. It shouldn't have happened to me. It didn't happen to other people. And what you're actually doing energetically, this is chi flow again, you're bringing something that happened 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago for some of my clients and bringing it into your life right now. And that creates clutter in your mind. Acceptance is a really powerful Taoist teaching. Accepting that it happened. Just accepting that. Accepting that that person acted in that way. Not that that person was right, or accepting that you were wrong, or accepting anything. Just accepting the incident or the situation and put it behind you. Clear the clutter. And that's what non-attachment means. Don't be holding on to the stories. And the inner child loves these stories. It builds up these stories, and we've said on the inner child teachings, what happens when you hold on to all these stories? These stories become your identity. The stories of your past become your identity, and that's the attachment. You start to see yourself as this victim. You start to see yourself as you can't cope. You start to see yourself as you're not good enough. You start to see yourself as unlovable. This is the attachment. You come attached to that. I'm sorry, I just want to say this one more thing. And just on that TV program, when you don't want to let go of a newspaper that's 40 years old for some crazy reason, you don't want to let go of these attachment beliefs for the same thing.
And not only do the attachment beliefs become the story which affects your current life, but they also affect the trajectory of your future life.
Absolutely. And then we start to clutter up the future life. And then we start to say things like, it will never work. It won't work out for me. It always fails for me. And you have now these beliefs which have consequences. I call them self-fulfilling prophecies. You call them confirmation biased. Because if you keep on telling yourself you're not good enough, you can't cope, things always work out bad for you, you're a victim, now you're setting the path for the future. And you're bringing your clutter along, your mindset, and you're projecting it into your own future.
And for some people, this attachment, almost like prediction of outcomes in a negative prediction way. So we can see how being attached to old faulty beliefs about ourselves and the world may affect our future in that regard. But for some people, they are attached to outcomes, which can be very positive outcomes. They have very kind of idealistic expectations or very rosy expectations of outcomes of kind of decisions they're going to make, relationships, career moves, holidays. It can be anything in our day-to-day pattern of life. But if we're rigidly attached to or expect certain outcomes, that also can trip us up.
It can, Alex. And again, that could be the inner child over guessing, wanting things, what I call the utopian world, wanting things to be perfect. This is what you're talking about here is very important as well, because this comes into perfection. When you want to be better, when you want it to be perfect. How many times did you say it's not perfect? This is the inner child now creating clutter, because what you're doing is you're focusing yourself. It can only be one way. We did a lovely teaching on the difference between setting goals and having an intention, because this is again about attachment. If you set this rigid goal, now what you're doing, you're bringing your focus in and you're attached to that outcome, and you cannot enjoy the journey. And what's even more important for a Taoist, you're closing all of the doors and the gates and the windows. So this translates to a funny word. translates from the Chinese into the English as the helpers. When you're fixed on a goal, on a certain outcome, you're cluttering your mind and you're closing everything to allow the helpers, the universe, synchronicity, intuition, new ideas, new people, new different situations to enter into your life. And again, I'm going to use the analogy of the hoarder. If their house is full to the brim and they can't get into it, no new ideas can come in. And so this happens in your mind. If you are absolutely fixated on, say, being perfect, being better than someone else, having a bigger car, a bigger house, a better job, more money, you become absolutely full in your mind, and you won't allow the helper, the universe, to come in and offer you different alternatives. And you see what I'm doing with my body, you lose that flow. You're like this. No, and you lose so many opportunities because no, this is not what I want. This is not what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And in the end, you're like the hoarder. You can't get nothing in. The Taoists say, this is it's in the Tao Te Ching, when your cup is full to the brim, you can't get nothing else into it. Why don't you let the energy flow through you? Why don't you be part of life? Why don't you trust the universe? Because that's where we live. These new opportunities will enter into your life. The minute you open the door and the windows, these enter into your life. And isn't this so much like feng shui?
Yeah.
Alex practices feng shui and teaches feng shui. We could be talking about feng shui now.
Yeah. Well, this is when you started talking about non-attachment to physical things. That's feng shui, because it's like we have to free the space within our homes or in our place of work. In the same way, we have to free the space up in our mind to allow the abundance of the fresh, clean, invigorated energy of the universe to flow into our homes or into our life or into our minds, rather than things becoming stale, held, and often in terms of the mind stuff, fear-based. So this idea of having expectations or holding on to stories of our past or what's going to happen in the future or who we are, this is all fear-based stuff. So in essence, fear stuff from the inner child stops the energy flow. If we lose the fear, if we detach from the fear, then the energy will flow.
Well, I would say slightly different if we don't create the fear, because remember, we are the creator of fear. But this is why a lot of my masters in China were also feng shui experts. And that's where I learned it from. And I taught Alex, because it's the same principle. The principle that we talk about in your mind, we focus on the mind because that's where we're working in. But the same principle affects everything. How good do you feel when you've had a good clean, when you cleared all the clutter out of your house, when you've thrown away things you've never used, never going to use, and you get that feeling because that's the chi now flowing. The principle is exactly the same about attachment. If you've got your mind full of all of these ideas that come from childhood normally, the injustices, the unfairnesses, what should have happened, when you didn't pass an exam, when your first boyfriend or girlfriend dumped you, and what people said to you. Some of my clients are talking about what people said to them 30 years ago. What relevance does it have? It has a relevance because they've cluttered up their mind with it. Here's something else my clients say. Why do I overthink? This is attachment. Because you are comfortable, and they really dislike when I say that. You are very comfortable and familiar with this overthinking. You're like a hoarder sitting in the chair with everything around and you can't move. That's what it's like. And now it's time to take a breath. And people say, well, how do I do that? How do I let go, David? No, that's the wrong question. Flip the question. Why are you holding on? There's only you holding on. No one else is holding on to this stuff. No one. The universe is not going to change if you hold on to it or let go. All the universe will do, chi energy will flow better. If you clear that person's house, throw everything into the dump, and leave them with what they need to live on, what's going to happen? Nothing. They're still going to live. Now the energy starts to flow. Now the helpers start to come into your life. Now the new opportunities start to flow into your life. You don't have to do anything. You just create the space and sit and wait. And then you'll see all of these new exciting opportunities coming into your life. And instead of having a goal fixed in your mind, why don't you have a direction of travel? And that's a good translation for the Tao. A compass, a direction of travel, a path, a way, a flow. And that's what we're looking for.
And David, you mentioned this overthinking. Do you think the overthinking comes from because if we are attached to an expectation of an outcome, it's like we then have to try and control everything in order to get that outcome. So that's where the mental strategizing, the emotional strategizing, the manipulation, the overthinking comes in. We make a lot of work for ourselves trying to uncontrol the 100 pieces in the jigsaw when actually maybe only a small number of the pieces are within our control.
You're absolutely right, Alex. That's one way. And the other way is, remember the pendulum, that something happened to you in the past. And then you start to think, wonder, consider why it happened. Why did they do that? Why did I do that? What would have been better as if it hadn't happened? How would my life be different? Wouldn't it be better if my mother had loved me? Wouldn't it be better if my father bounced me on my knee? My life would be better. Look at me. Things happen to me. So it's the both ends of the pendulum. And that overthinking, Alex, what is so important is it makes you the victim. That's the first thing. And for a lot of my clients, it takes away their accountability. They stop being accountable because they have this story, this identity to blame. Oh, well, it's not me. My father didn't love me. So therefore, I'm just repeating a client. Therefore, if my father doesn't love me and didn't love me, then I don't know how to love myself. So I said, you have children, don't you? And she said, yes. So you don't love them? Of course I love them. They're my light. I give them so much love. So you do know how to love them? She says, yeah, but I don't know how to love myself. It was the same as loving your children. Love is an emotional feeling. And you see how that mindset has just blocked up her mind about her. It's like she filled her mind, hoarded all of these injustices in her mind. And then for her, the new opportunities can't come in. And like the hoarder, they will hang on to these like grim death. I often think with my clients, have you ever seen when a dog has a bone and they hold onto the bone and you pick them up and they're off the ground and they're still holding onto the bone? That's a lot of my clients. These beliefs, these hoarding is so important to them. But actually, if you step back now, if you're one of these people with your mind full of overthinking, step back. What would change if you just let go? What would really change? Nothing. I tell you what, as one of my clients says, yes, but they'd get away with it, wouldn't they? Well, they've got away with it already. The only one that's suffering is you. They don't know you're suffering. Nobody else knows what goes on into your mind. You see what I say about beliefs? Beliefs are only yours. How do you change a belief? How do you keep a belief? Why do you want to keep a belief? You see, it's the same thing.
And David, you mentioned the word accountability because I think there's a danger for some people that with this non-attachment concept that they think, well, if I'm not attached to the outcomes, or I shouldn't have any rigid expectations, somehow then it takes the motivation off me in terms of my actions, my doing. I'm not so kind of motivated or driven, or I'm kind of thinking I can be a bit lazy with stuff. But I remember you telling me once about, we should be accountable and responsible and do our very best in whatever thing we are doing or creating or working at, whether it's a piece of work or a relationship or something to do with our health or a complicated negotiation. We should give our very best, But then once we've given, once we've kind of devoted that energy with pure, good, authentic intention, then it's kind of, we've let it go into the universe, and that it's no longer within our control, and that we should no longer have an expectation of what the outcome is, but we know we've done our best, and that's the most important thing.
And that's the teaching, Alex. That's a great explanation of the teaching, that we should do a teaching on motivation, because if you're looking outside of yourself to be motivated, then you're giving away what it is, your energy. You should be accountable for your motivation, for doing what you believe is right for you, what it is that makes you authentic, what it is that puts you into your flow. That's not somebody else's responsibility. That's your responsibility. And this is why I call owning it, being accountable, owning it, because this is so important in our model. If you want to clutter up your mind with what happened to you 20, 30 years ago in your childhood, absolutely fine. I say to my clients, I am not here to change that belief. That's your belief. If that's important for you, please keep it. I'm only asking you why you want to keep it. Why is it important for you in this life? Why is it important for you right now and moving forward to hold, let's say it was injustice, let's say it was abuse, let's say that's all true. Why is it important for you? See, own it. You can't change what's not yours. And so many people will put the ownership, oh, it was them, they should have done this, parents should do that, things should do that. They didn't do it. Now, what do we do with that? Because you are now holding on to it. That's what you're doing. You're holding on to it. You're cluttering up your mind. Why are you doing that? And here's the golden thread. Be accountable. Take ownership. Because when it's yours, now you can do something about it. You can carry on holding on to it for the rest of your life. Please clutter up your house. It's your mind. You are responsible. I can't stop you. Clutter up your mind. Be full, be dogmatic. Don't let yourself open to all the joy. Please do that. I wouldn't, but you could. You're a responsible person. And that's why owning it or being accountable is one of the things why people want to overthink, because they don't want to step forward. And the reasons why they don't want to do that, just finish off this teaching, is because they may fail. And other people may criticize them, judge them, compare them. And so they stay in this familiar, comfortable place where they fall and they can feel sorry for themselves and they see themselves as a victim. Please, you're not a victim. You are victorious. You are amazing. Not perfect. Open yourself up now. Open the windows. Let the fresh air blow through. Start a bonfire, imaginary bonfire in your back garden, and just burn all that stuff. If you haven't, there's a saying in feng shui, if you haven't used something in 6 months, you don't need it. Get rid of it. And that includes your clothes. Get rid of them. Fold them up. Put them away. You don't need them. Don't need them. Clear your wardrobe. Clear your mind. Clear your life. Look at something. Say, when was the last time I used that? Dunk it, throw it, put it in the charity shop, whatever, give it away, get that energy, and then you will attract more into your life. This has become a feng shui. This is feng shui.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this teaching on non-attachment. Do let us know, and please maybe share it with someone else who may also benefit. I'll put links in the show notes to some related teachings that will help you with this topic, including the one David mentioned about the difference between intention and goal setting, and this whole concept of energy flow and opening yourself up to energy flow. If you'd like to work with David one-to-one on any of the issues we've talked about in today's teaching or any of our other teachings, I will put a link in the show notes as well to learn more about David's video consultations via Zoom. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week, and we would love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.